Okay, so there we go. Today we're going to run some PowerShell. Go on, just connect to server one. And log into it. So we did have one issue, our Visual Studio Code that we installed, and I thought I had it in there correctly. It installed only for the administrator user and didn't get actually deployed to the whole system. So when we sysprepped it, it deleted all the installation of that Visual Studio Code that we had installed. So that's kind of a downside. So what I want you to do this time, I have 3 files that I want you to grab and copy over. Let me just make a folder here. It's going to make it easier to locate and find all of the files. That way you don't have to go download them. Okay, so go ahead and access my system from File Explorer. Not from your server one, but just from your main host machine. So when you type in that into your address bar, it should take you into the share folder, and you should see the Visual Studio Code folder. Just copy that folder. So we're going to copy the whole Visual Studio Code folder. And after you get that located and copied, you're going to go to server one and put it into enhanced session mode. And that will allow us to paste.
I'm sorry, so we're putting that code into that folder, the BDI 26, or
Yeah, and the address bar of File Explorer. Okay, so once it's copied, you're just going to go to your server and put it into enhanced session mode, that last icon in the icon bar at the top. It'll ask you to set the screen resolution. And once you got server one logged into and it's in enhanced session mode, on server one, open the File Explorer window. This PC should show your 60 gig hard drive, 40 something gig free probably on it. When you open it up, and you just right click and paste on the top of C drive. Okay, let's go and open up the C here. Inside server one, you go and open up that Visual Studio Code folder that you pasted. And let's go ahead and reinstall these items. So start with the blue icon. Get it installed. I check everything under other than the license agreement. This is the only other thing I really change is make sure all the other stuff is checked. And just finish out the installer. Yeah, we'll go ahead and launch Visual Studio Code. And once it's launched, we'll reinstall that V6 file. If you remember, you click the little Tetris block and the little ellipse at the top. You will install from V6. Just go into C drive, Visual Studio Code, and there's that one V6 file. Install it. I do, but not had a single student told me that they can see it in the projector. When I start writing code, like we're not sure if you're using colons or pipes or. So I've had to switch it over to light mode. It's something to do with the projector up here. Okay, so PowerShell Visual Studio Code loads up and we're ready to start playing inside of our server one. So you can click the little Tetris block again to just minimize. And yes, you can choose the default mode. So if you're looking at the themes, you always want to click the one that has default on it. The others, themes, colorize, and they have their own colorization and it doesn't match the plugins that you put in there. So it's kind of difficult because if you're used to an editor like this, it colorizes keywords and stuff, and now they're not colorized. It's hard to spot errors and stuff in your typing. So you really only have two themes here that either dark default or light default. Any of the others are not going to be appropriate. But there is quite a few different ones. They just don't work too well. Okay, I'm going to start a new file. Just file, new file. And we're going to go ahead and save the file to start a new language. So again, file, save as. Put it in your documents folder on server one. And let's just give it example one. And the save type has to be changed to PowerShell. So if you don't have the save type correct, it won't turn to correct syntax highlighting and debugging on. So as I save it, it'll say starting PowerShell down here at the bottom. I have an older version of package management, but I don't have internet to fix it. I was looking up how to install the latest version of this package management system to newer versions so that they work better. And well, y'all are going to be the first class to get to try my experiment. So if this pops up down here, which it should, just click Not Now. And we're going to try to do an experiment. So up here at the top, let me see if I can increase my font size, make it a little bit easier. I've been reading this page over here. That zoom, I didn't zoom everything. Oh. My menu bar is not there. Let's drag that around. That's a little annoying. Maybe something with the package management. It did say there's an issue if package manager is not up to the latest version. So that's what we're going to try to do. So we all copied everything into the right spot. So my experiment here, Googling stuff around and looking at Stack Overflow. If some of y'all are coders, so you probably have visited Stack Overflow before searching for help. It's a website that, coding website that tons and tons of questions have been asked on. So let's type in install dash package. And the name of the package is package management. And the source, C:\/ Visual Studio Code. And I'm just going to try and see if this is going to, that's not going to run. Let me see if I can copy and paste it down here at the bottom. See, will it run down here? Okay, so I want to look up that later to see if there's an easy way to manually install that package. Let's look at some of the stuff though. I want to give y'all some notes. So PowerShell, what is it? PowerShell, scripting language. And it is good for automating a task in a domain environment where you have thousands or tens of thousands of objects, nodes and stuff. Like I said, the hospitals and stuff around the state, they've got tons of computers and they've got multiple locations. And Baptist Health, you know, they've got the little quick clinics all over the place, and Spring Hill Baptist and the big Baptist over in Little Rock. So they got locations all over and everything's internetworked. If you're an IT person needing to make a change, you're not going to be able to go around to every place in the state and do that. So yes, Active Directory does help out quite a bit, but also using Active Directory to push out scripts to run commands and stuff on multiple things is extremely helpful. And learning PowerShell scripting, it's not a coding language where you develop applications. It's just for administration purposes. You used to have kind of a blur between developers and IT, but now that things are just getting more and more automated, IT staff is needing to at least script things, not be full developers, but be able to script and have things run on remote machines, especially on these servers that have no graphical interface, is to be able to write scripts and make them do things. So components of PowerShell. Commandlets. Probably misspelling everything, but I can't spell. That's terrible. I use tab complete and Google. Word doesn't even know what I'm trying to spell. Google can figure it out because they're made by IT engineers. It's smart enough. So commandlets, they are made up of verb dash noun. Verb noun. So one of the commandlets I was trying to use was install package. That follows verb. Install is a verb, and the noun is package. So all of your PowerShell commandlets are verb dash noun. And there are a few that are aliased, such as clear host has an alias of clear. They tried to do some of these for people that came from the Unix world, and you know that you type clear to clear a screen in a Linux or Unix shell environment. So instead of having to type full commandlets out, a few of them do have aliases. So clear actually executes clear dash host. So you'll find that in a few spots where you can abbreviate. When you're coding in Visual Studio Code though, it always flags and goes, hey, you've not typed everything out. You should, just for a consistent code, you should spell it all the way out and not take shortcuts. So I've not created new aliases, but there should be a way to create aliases. I've never done that. I've tried to write the code in scripts and spell everything out completely. Adding in aliases can make your day-to-day tasks faster, but if you're actually writing out code, you want to do the full commands. So if somebody else needs to come by and look at the code, they can understand everything better. If you're creating your own aliases for things that doesn't match what anybody else has ever done, it makes it real hard for somebody to come and troubleshoot your code. If you created like 15 aliases and are using it throughout instead of the real commandlets. So these commandlets also have switches. There will be a dash and some name. And you can typically cycle through, if you're using an editor or even from the command prompt, you can hit dash and start using the tab key. So, tab will cycle through all switches. So that's useful because I can't remember all the switches and how they're exactly spelled. Sometimes I've used the commandlet enough, I remember what the commandlet is. So I can do like install dash package space, put a minus, and then start hitting tab to see what all options are in it. Another useful, although not something I do a whole lot, you can get help. Typically, I'll have a browser open and I'll search for help on a commandlet through a browser, but you can do it from a PowerShell window with get help, and then the verb dash noun, the commandlet that you're wanting to get help on. And it'll bring up a help screen. So whether you're viewing it in the command prompt or you're viewing it in a web page, you'll see some things like see some brackets surrounding things, and you'll see some stuff that doesn't have brackets around it. If it doesn't have brackets around it, it's required to be added to the command for it to function. So if you have some type of verb noun command and it has, you see dash name, that means it requires that to be fed into it. You have to give it a name and a string. Sometimes you might see it like this, where the name's not really required to be in there, but you have to give a name. So if you're like on a test connection to a computer, you got to run test connection, you got to give it a computer name for it to test to see if the connection's up or not. So there's some things that are required. Things that are required are not surrounded by the little hard brackets. Things that are surrounded by the hard brackets here are optional. You might need them, but you don't have to put them for the command to function. And if you need it to do a specific thing, like I said, you might have to put it for it to do what you want to. It just means they're optional. But if they're not, it's required. And if anybody's been coding, you probably have come across this before, hopefully. But this is syntax of any help that I've ever read through. And I use this to designate. And as you're reading help on command line, if you've never been there before, just knowing what's all the brackets and things, you'll likely see string really like that. Yep. So if this was, there literally was something called verb noun. It was a PowerShell commandlet, and it required a string verb dash noun server one is what it would be saying you would need to do. So the brackets right here, that right there is not surrounded by hard brackets. I mean, you have to put that. You have to put a string. And what's a string? Text. String of something. String of letters and numbers is what it is. So this will be the very minimum for that command to run. I could omit name, I could omit DNS, I could omit description, or I'm just making up the stuff, just as an example right there. But at a minimum, you have to type the commandlet and you have to type string. And I see people try to do stuff like this and it fails, or they literally type string and it fails. I'm like, no. String is, you're replacing that with what you're wanting. On the whatever server 3. You might have to put, it might be a longer string for it to work. It doesn't literally mean put those greater than, less than symbols and put string. It means that needs to be replaced with the legitimate value of what you're wanting this thing to work on. Maybe it's a file, maybe it's a folder, maybe it's a computer, maybe it's a username, but it's got to be replaced with what you're wanting it to work on. So pretty cool. That's PowerShell. And I don't know if you got to take good notes, or some people pull out their cell phones, go click with the camera. I'm going to have this on a YouTube, but I might not give it to y'all. I may just give it to people that are absent today. So you may want to go click, I don't know. I'll probably open this up and post it because you might want to rehear this lecture. You might want to go to sleep, you know, when you can't go to sleep and need to rewatch. Very helpful.
Like some people want to try to learn a new language, put it on while they're trying to go to bed.
Yep. So today we're going to be looking at firewall rules and stuff on server 3. And we're going to use PowerShell to do it. We could use group policy. I would really just use group policy if I was doing it in a production environment and not do it manually through PowerShell commands. But we need to start getting used to some PowerShell because we're going to be slowly building upon PowerShell knowledge throughout the whole course. The last few weeks of the course we're done with chapter 7, so we're working only with PowerShell. And there's a few modules that Microsoft houses on their learning site that we'll run in and do and look at Azure services. One of our ASU domain controllers is ran in the cloud, just in case all the systems here die. We got one way off campus in the cloud. So get is a very, very common verb, and set is a very, very common verb, followed with whatever noun with PowerShell. It's real common that you start with get and you get some information and view it on the screen. And once you get that information and you can determine, do I need to make a change? And if you need to make a change, guess what? You just use set. So you might get, and one of us net firewall rule or rules, we'll use tab complete is another cool thing about PowerShell. Once you get halfway through a command like it's get net firewall something, you can tab through all the commandlets until you get to the one you want. So we might want to get and view the firewall. Once we figure out something to change, we might want to set net firewall rule. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're getting information and viewing it on the screen, and then we're going to be setting it. Now, the firewall rules, they normally have a rule for, you know, inbound traffic and outbound traffic. And some protocols have multiple ports. So if a protocol has 2 or 3 port numbers it uses, it's going to have a rule for the inbound and a rule for the outbound port. And then some of the protocols also have UDP and TCP. So there'll be an inbound and outbound for UDP, an inbound and outbound for TCPs, or maybe 4 or 5, 6 different rules for each service. And that can get really, really, really long. And we'll look at that. And I'll show you some ways around it. There's some other PowerShell commandlets we can use to, and some switches to clap some stuff down. Okay, let's get our hands dirty. Server 1. With Server Manager started, click on all servers. And you should have server 1, 2, and 3 in the list. We did that on Tuesday. If you're missing server 1, 2, and 3, if you remember on Tuesday, we added in add server, click find all, and added our server 1, 2, and 3. Again, you have to be doing this on your server 1, not on your host machine. So make sure you're in the right server manager. And you just simply right click server 3, highlight it first, right click on it. And before we launch PowerShell, let's try to launch computer management. It's going to take it a while because the firewall is blocking it. So as we wait on it to time out, we can also right click. I'm tired of waiting. It'll come up and complain in a little bit. I'm going to launch PowerShell, Windows PowerShell. Yeah, some of you are getting it popped up on your screen. Mine's still being lazy. It'll pop up and give a warning that RPC service is not available and some other. And then computer management will finally pop up and there won't be anything that you can configure with computer management. So that's because the firewall is blocking it. I'm just going to do a CD backslash just to make my prompt a little bit shorter. It had me in my documents folder when I launched it. Notice it's server 3. Your prompt. I'm not working on server 1, I'm working on server 3. So carefully examine your prompt to make sure you're working on the right computer. That doesn't seem like it. There we go. Make it a little bit easier for you to see. So you see the first part, server 3. That just tells me I'm connected remotely. I'm not on the local. If I was local, it'd just have like PS and a file path that I was located at. Okay, let's get dash net firewall. And I'm going to type in an R in it tab. And it completed it for me. I know there's a bunch of net firewall items. That's why I went ahead and put an R in there. Get dash net firewall. And I put a letter R and I use tab key and it auto completed for me. So Pedro, close down your computer management window that popped up. And then right click and on server 3 and click Windows PowerShell.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead and hit enter on get net firewall rule. It'll be entertaining. It should be entertaining. Entertaining and overwhelming, right? I'm going to go ahead and enter on mine. So you should have had nice long. It's not gibberish, but each, like Windows Management Instrumentation, they have a TCP, and then they probably have another Windows Management Instrumentation out TCP. They'll have an NTCP, RPCSS. They have all these and a whole lot of information about it. So it's showing the display name, so how that you would see it if you opened up the firewall, the graphical firewall editor, you would see the display name. There's also descriptions. If the protocol belongs to a group, you'll have a group name. You'll have whether it's enabled or not. If it's enabled, that firewall is allowing traffic to that service. If the enable is set to false, then the traffic is being blocked going to that particular service. So this output is not very conductive of me figuring out how to allow computer management to open up. There's too much information. So I'm going to clear my screen, hit the up arrow a couple of times to bring back my get net firewall rule. Or you can just hit the up arrow. If you can see it okay on your screen, you don't have to clear. I just know it's hard to see the bottom of the screen over your monitors. So get net firewall rule. I'm going to hit space and I'm going to use a pipe. You know what pipe is? Hopefully, the pipe symbol. Shift of the backslash right under the backspace key. Looks like a bar. Sometimes there's a split in the middle of it, but your up and down bar, depending on the front font. And I'm going to select, I guess I'll go ahead and spell it all the way out. Select object. Select is a SQL type command where you select what columns you want to view. Microsoft has it named, they have an alias of just select, but you can also put the dash object if you want the verb noun feel of PowerShell all the way out. And if you're not taking a SQL language or something, good to learn a little bit of SQL, at least the basic query. So select, what columns do I want to see? Well, each of those gave us a whole bunch of fields for each service. Those are considered columns. So I want to narrow down. We had name, display name. We also had group name. I want to narrow it down to display group is what it was. It's got to be in single quotes. Display group surrounded with single quotation marks. And then comma, enabled. Yeah.
No.
So select dash object and have a space. And then with single quotation marks, I have display group all together, comma, enabled with a D at the end, and it also surrounded with single quotation marks. And then verifying I'm still connected to server 3. When I hit enter, it puts it in a little bit easier format because I'm only displaying 2 columns at a time, and it can get that all on the screen in column format instead of having them each individual spread out with all the attributes in a vertical instead of horizontal fashion for each one. So this output is easier to look at. Okay, you're missing select object. So you hit the up arrow key and just, no, hit the up arrow key on your keyboard. Well, not that many times, just had to do it once. Hit the down arrow key till you get, there you go. Now just left arrow over, and then you type your select object, space, and then select dash object. Now hit enter, and it should get net far. You left an L out of firewall. Hit the up arrow key once, and then left arrow and add an extra L to the.
Oh my God.
Yep. There we go. I said that's when I went to the R, that's why I hit tab to autocomplete things. If it doesn't autocomplete, then I know to start backspacing and then hitting tab until it starts cycling through something. It's just to help So I'm using display group because, like I said, some of those services required 2 or 3 different ports to be open, and the group associates some of these and clumps them, like 2 or 3 will clump into one name under a group name instead of display name. I'm doing display group. Like this diag track might actually be 2 or 3 rules, but I said group it, and those 2 or 3 roles have the same group name. That way I can act upon all of them at one time. So there's virtual machine monitoring is being blocked. Network discovery is being blocked. Remote event monitor is being blocked. Scrolling through here, Windows remote management is actually true. Remote desktop is true. Remote volume management's being blocked. Computer management has tools for like managing the volume. They have tools for managing services that are being run. So notice all these remote things are blocked. That's what's blocking the computer management. So kind of as a shotgun, also Windows management instrumentation. So we're going to just kind of shotgun approach it a little bit. We're going to open up anything that has remote in the name. And we're going to also open up the WMI, the Windows Management Instrumentation Service. So let's type in, why did it do that? Set. Don't know why it's scrolling like that. Okay. Set dash net firewall. You notice right here when I put R, if I use tab, it completes it and auto corrects the upper lowercase stuff. I know it's typed correct. I'm going to put a space. I'm going to put a dash, and then I'm going to start hitting tab. So as you remember before, I said you could put dash and you could tab through if you didn't know the names of all the switches that you could add. So as I tab through here, I see name, I see display name, I see display group, right? Display group. I'm going to put space, a single quote. I'm going to put an asterisk. What's an asterisk mean? Any or all characters, right? From 0 to any number. I'm going to type the word remote. I'm going to put another asterisk and an ending single quote. Set net firewall rule. If the display group has the word remote in it, with anything before or after it, is basically what I'm stating right here. I want to enable and the dash E, and I'm going to use my tab key and it'll complete it. I knew that was a switch just from using this a lot in the past. Space. True. I'll hit enter. And hopefully not have any red. No red. No red's normally a good thing. If you got red, something's misspelled somewhere. Let's see here. Set net firewall. Let's see. You put quotations instead of asterisks. So your double quotes need to be stars, your asterisks. Yeah. Now it'll work. Yep. To verify it worked, I can hit my up arrow key twice, 3 times, 4 times, or I'm going to hit it until I get to where it's the last one that it got all the firewall rules correctly. I don't have to retype. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I've already typed that and made mistakes 2 or 3 times. So I hit the up arrow key till I get to where that one worked. So I'm going to hit enter. Let's check out what happens. So I got this right here had remote in it, so it's true. This had a remote in it, so it's true. Scrolling up, this remote volume management is true now. So doing pretty good. But one last thing I want to do. I want to go and open up the WMI. So I'm going to hit the up arrow key. My font's so large. Let me clear my screen. There we go. I'm going to hit the up arrow key till I get back to the set. And instead of remote, I'm just going to change remote to WMI and hit enter. Well, also open up the Windows management instrumentation, things that we'll look at doing later on. It's a cool protocol to have open. We could have done this a little bit better. Probably should have for security. There'd be another switch. Policy, description, profile. The profile should have been set. There's a public, private, and domain profile. I should have set that. I'm not going to. I've already run the thing, but when you're doing this on a domain-based network, you should only open the firewall rule for domain computers. That way it can read the subnet and auto-determine that, you know, what computers are on the Contoso.com domain, allowed them, but don't allow anybody else. So if somehow the internet was able to come in and try to hit that computer, it would still block it for non-domain computers. But I'm going to leave that off, and I'm going to minimize the PowerShell window, and I'm going to relaunch computer management on server 3 and see if anything was different from the first time I tried to launch computer management. It should launch quite quickly. Did it? I see thumbs up. Before, you had to wait for about 30 seconds or so. Seemed like 5 hours. 30 seconds is a long time waiting on a computer to do something. And then it gave an error. Now this launched quickly. So I can navigate and see there are still some of these tools that are probably blocked. But some of the main things like services are now accessible. Windows Management Instrumentation Control is there. I can see who's logged into server 3 and how many files and stuff they have open and how long they've been connected, things like that. I can check out the event viewer to see if that server has any events that might be interesting to look at or diagnose and fix problems. So we did our first from PowerShell, messing with firewall rules. I did tell you I likely don't do that with PowerShell. Sometimes I manually jumped in real quickly, changed the firewall rule real quick to test something out. Most of the time I use group policy, which is a LAN 2, a chapter 8 thing. We'll likely look at some of that this semester because it's really a nice center point of pushing configurations out to a bunch of machines or a bunch of users at one time. So I'd use something called group policy, set a whole bunch of firewall rules, say apply it to these machines and it automatically apply it to all those machines. I wouldn't have to type all these PowerShell commands that we just did. But if I did that, we couldn't have had fun and run our first PowerShell. So always good to have a little bit of fun here and there. Neat. Let's look at something else. I believe I showed that we could add and remove a feature. Y'all don't click this, but I'll show you on my screen. So if I remember, I showed that you could add or remove features and you could pick on a particular remote computer and you could install things on the remote computer. This is server 3, shows it right here where my mouse is circling. So I can install any of these services and stuff if I wanted to on server 3. There are some services I want to install, but I don't want to do it graphically. I want to do it the hard way. Since we don't have many people here today, we'll probably do that on Tuesday, but let's look at it from a PowerShell standpoint. So if you've not, close down your computer management window and make sure you're connected PowerShell to server 3. So again, you should see your blue screen, you should see server 3. Let's look at some stuff here. So there's Git, Windows feature. It's different on Windows 10. It's like Git Windows optional feature or something like that on Windows 10 machines. On servers, it's Git Windows feature, but that's one that kind of trips me up. I've kind of gotten used to it, jumping from Windows 10 to a server machine, but Git Windows feature, enter, see what happens. So Git-Windows feature shows me all the role services that are available. I'll scroll up to the top. It's kind of graphical as text can possibly be. I see the little boxes here that are unchecked, meaning the services aren't installed. I found one that has a checkbox on it, and looking all the way over the right side, it shows installed. The others show available, meaning I could install them. So that's pretty neat. And I'm pretty sure it's install Windows feature. We'll play with that on Tuesday. Like I said, you can't memorize everything. You can try a couple of different verbs, and I'm pretty sure it's install, maybe enable. It's install or enable feature. One of the two. I know those are both valid verbs, so we'll type those in tab complete and see what works. We may even look at the help and see which one. But this here makes it real easy. So if I want to enable a feature or install a feature, I'll look down and figure out, do I want to install a file server? That's something that we'll want to do on Tuesday. And it gives me the name to use with the commandlet right there. So I can just copy that and put it into the command that enables a particular feature and run it, and it'll install. Then it should have a little X there. That's kind of our goal on next week, is run PowerShell and install some features.
So it'll still be Git, it'll be like install.
It'll be, let's look at that beforehand. So there's enable Windows optional feature. Install package, install screen, install Windows feature. So there's two of them. There's enable and there's install. One of them's optional feature, one of them's Windows feature. So I'll do a get help. Install Windows feature. Get help, enable Windows optional feature. That one is on Windows 10. So that one will install the, let's look at it here. There's features and then there's server roles. Roles provide services to clients. Features provide management tools, graphical management tools to configure the roles. So enable Windows optional feature would be installing something here. To do the roles, it's install Windows feature. I could Google it and it would tell me that. I'm just remembering from what I've done in the past. It took me just looking at both ways, some tab complete to jog my memory. It's okay to Google stuff.
Is it?
Yes. Except in other classes where they tell you you're not supposed to cheat. You can't do that on tests, but sometimes I've had Googling on some tests before. There's not any tests in here that you're really going to be able to use Google for. So you got test out. You can use whatever you can do to
Google,
answer those.
Google should have yours.
Yeah.
But I don't know who does.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, wait a second.
So good.
He's retired. He doesn't know anything. I'm going to go and exit out of everything. Now, there was my original error from when I first tried to launch computer management. Yeah, it was just behind stuff. I didn't see it. So there's our entryway into some server management. Bless you. We'll also, I don't know if we'll get to it next week or not, but we'll also push out patches. So from our host machine, we will download patches because we have internet. We can shut down these servers and use a PowerShell script to inject the patch into the hard disk file. Is it really useful? If you're running some VDIs and stuff, you can write some automated scripts to, especially if they're non-internet machines, you can inject patches into them. There's a few scenarios it could be useful for. Most time you'd probably just let the Windows update system do that for you. But there may be a time where you need to inject patches directly in. You can also shut these, I can shut the system down and mount that VHD file. And I could tell it to enable those Windows features. And it would do that without it running. It's cool things you can do. I think it's cool. Useful? I don't know. Cool? Yes, it's cool that I could shut server 3 down, use PowerShell, mount one of these to a drive letter, and then tell it to install packages and stuff into it. You can even install like MSI files. I could have probably scripted and installed Visual Studio Code while it was shut down, and then start the system up and like, hey, there it is installed.
So you can't use PowerShell while it's in use.
Well, you can like we were, but I was just saying that you can't access these when it's running. But if it's turned off, it doesn't stop you from still using PowerShell to access that file and be working it while it's off. So while it's running though, we have to do what we did today, connect to the PowerShell and run scripts. So we'll slowly play with PowerShell. We'll get up to what we be like entering 100 users in with all of their address and phone number and everything. And you're like, I don't want to enter that manually. It's like, right, let's do a PowerShell script and let's step through each one of them with the script and let it do it. So